I think the most important thing to me is a well-found boat, and part of a well-found boat is your rigging. So I'm going to tell you a little story about when we were in Hawaii. We'd been there about 3 months, just the two of us on board, and we're on a 68-foot ketch, 42 tons, pretty big boat, but we're used to handling it. We've been on it for a few years at a time. And we were in Molokai. A storm came in. It's only blowing 35 to 40 on the islands, but between the islands, it was blowing 55 to 60 with 30-foot seas. So here we were stuck behind Molokai. We decided we're going to cut across, go over into Lanai. We tuck in there for a couple of days. Then we go in behind Haleakala on Maui. It's a 12,000-foot peak. It's beautiful, no problems. Then we decided we better take off because the storm's about to cross over. And when the storm passes over us, we're going to go from having 55 knots of wind on our tail to 35 knots on our bow. And it's easier to take a boat 55 knots downwind than it is to take 35 knots against the wind. So 5 o'clock in the morning, we pull out. We take out slowly. We put on a handkerchief of a head sail, triple reef the main. No staysail, no main, no mizzen. And we start heading out. About 8 miles out, we're up to 8 knots. I mean, we're just cooking. We got these 30-foot seas coming up behind us, and we just surf down them until it goes under us, and then we slow, and then we go fast. We get up to 10 knots, we slow down to 4 knots, we get up to 9 knots, we slow down to 3 knots. But we're doing pretty good, and it's comfortable. But the autopilot would not steer it, so I had to steer the boat. So I'd steer for an hour, then Jody would steer for 10 minutes because that's all she could steer. It was pretty tough. And we're about, like I said, 8 miles out, and all of a sudden that sail starts luffing. And I'm thinking, how can a sail luff out in the middle with all this wind? And I look behind me, and there behind me is an 80-foot wall of water. What we had was two 30-foot waves that crossed and made a rogue wave. That made about a 60-foot wave, but in front of it was a 20-foot trough, and we were in the trough. So what happened is we start going up the face of the wave, and as we do, we're going up like this, and as there's less water on one side than there's on the other, the boat starts to do this, and then the wind hits the sails, and then we do this, and then the wave breaks, and we do this. But we're doing 8.5 knots, and you don't slow 42 tons down. So basically, we just augured in. I had my arm through our destroyer wheel, and I was literally hanging from it inside here. The wave broke over the boat. I barely got wet. The 10,000 pounds of extra lead we'd put in the keel pops us back up like it's supposed to. It's a bright sunny day, just windy, and I look up and there's so much water in the sail that as it pours out, it looks like Niagara Falls. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And I looked down at Jody, who's down in the storm room, and I said, Jody, you need to see this. And Jody's like, so this is pretty much when I came up with the saying that attitude is the difference between an ordeal and an adventure. This is also the time when Jody came up with the saying, sometimes it's just an ordeal. But back to the safety. So we get it across the channel, and we pull into Waikoloa on the Big Island, and we get tied down, and we're putting the sails away. And I look, and we're missing a shroud, our lower shroud, our lower main shroud, aft shroud had gone. And I'm thinking, how could that happen? And what it was the literally had broken off at the tangs, both ends. But because we had 13 stays per mast, it didn't affect us. If we'd had normal rigging, we probably would have lost our mast, which would have been a big deal. But as it was, 3 hours later, we had cut ourselves a new shroud, we had it in place, and we were ready to go on. So rigging, to me, is what makes me feel safe, and safety is a very good thing. Thanks for asking, Wally.